In the heart of West Africa, the Oyo Empire once stood as one of the mightiest forces, its cavalry thundering across the vast landscape, striking fear into the hearts of enemies. With unparalleled military might and an intricate political system, the Oyo Empire rose to dominance for centuries. But beneath the surface of this grand empire, tensions were building that would eventually bring it to its knees. This gripping tale of power, betrayal, and civil war explores how the Oyo Empire, at its peak, was brought down not by external forces, but by internal strife and the erosion of unity within its ranks. From its military triumphs to the tragic fall, Thunder of the Alaafin delves into the rise and fall of one of the greatest empires in African history. At the dawn of the 14th century, a force began to shape the history of West Africa, an empire built upon the foundation of strength, unity, and vision. The Oyo Empire, located in present-day Nigeria, emerged as a beacon of military and political power. Born from the fertile plains of the Yoruba people, the city-state of Oyo grew to become the most formidable empire in the region, its name synonymous with dominance and prestige. The legendary Alaafin king was both a spiritual and political leader, whose word was law, ensuring a balance of power between the monarch and the Oyo Mesi, a council of noblemen. The Yoruba people's legendary resilience and warriors formed the core of Oyo's power. From the very beginning, their expertise in warfare, especially their cavalry, set them apart from neighboring kingdoms. Oyo's strategic location along the trade routes allowed it to amass wealth through both commerce and conquest. The empire thrived as a center of culture, education, and power. The founding myth of Oyo tells of Oranmiyan, a heroic figure who brought the early structure of the kingdom together, solidifying its place as an epicenter of Yoruba civilization. With each military campaign, Oyo expanded its borders, absorbing smaller kingdoms, controlling trade routes, and maintaining dominance over vast territories. This expansion solidified the Alaafin's authority, whose influence stretched across the region. Yet, beneath the strength of the Oyo Empire's external successes, a growing tension would slowly begin to unravel the unity that had made them so powerful. The seeds of this unraveling would not come from the outside, but from within the empire itself. The Oyo Empire's military was the heartbeat of its power, and its cavalry, in particular, became legendary across West Africa. At the heart of the empire's military prowess was a highly disciplined and fearsome force of horsemen known as the Ajo, skilled in mounted combat and equipped with bows, spears, and shields. The Oyo cavalry's strategic importance cannot be overstated. Their speed, precision, and overwhelming presence in battle made them the envy of neighboring empires. The horses themselves were a symbol of Oyo's strength. The cavalry was known for their swift raids, attacking at lightning speed before disappearing into the vast landscapes of the Yoruba kingdom. These cavalry units were not just warriors. They were trained tacticians, mastering the art of ambush, feigned retreat, and coordinated assaults. Under the leadership of the Alaafin, these elite warriors helped expand Oyo's reach, maintaining a tight grip on trade routes that brought immense wealth to the empire. Their mobility allowed them to strike quickly, overwhelm enemies before they could retaliate, and retreat into Oyo's fortified cities when needed. The Oyo military also employed an array of strategies that combined both land and naval forces, ensuring their control over the vast territory they ruled. Unlike many of their contemporaries, Oyo's cavalry was not merely a tool of conquest. It was an institution, a symbol of royal authority and the divine right of the Alaafin to rule. The warriors that composed Oyo's military were not only fierce fighters, but also held a significant place in the empire's social hierarchy. The Ajo was more than just a military force. It was an embodiment of the Alaafin's power, ensuring peace and order throughout the empire. With each battle they won, the Oyo cavalry cemented their place as one of the most formidable military units in Africa. Yet, as with all empires, the very power that ensured Oyo's dominance would later contribute to its downfall. The reliance on military might, while invaluable for expansion, would come to strain the very core of the empire's political structure. As Oyo's borders grew, so did the challenges of managing an empire built on conquest. By the mid-17th century, the Oyo Empire had reached its zenith. Under the reign of the Alaafin, the empire controlled a vast swath of West Africa, from the Niger River to the coast of the Gulf of Guinea. The empire's wealth was immense, largely derived from the thriving trans-Saharan and coastal trade routes that passed through its territories. Oyo's merchants traded in salt, gold, and slaves, with Oyo becoming a significant player in the global economy of the time. Cities such as Oyo-Ile, the capital, flourished as bustling hubs of commerce, learning, and culture. The complex political structure of the empire played a pivotal role in its success. While the Alaafin held supreme authority, his power was checked by the Oyo Mesi, a council of noblemen who advised the ruler and held considerable influence in governance. This system ensured a balance of power, preventing any one individual from becoming too powerful. The Oyo Mesi had the power to review the Alaafin's decisions and even depose him if he was deemed unfit to rule, adding an element of democratic checks and balances to the empire's governance. Militarily, the Oyo Empire's strength allowed it to project power far beyond its borders. The empire frequently engaged in military campaigns against rival states, expanding its reach and solidifying its control over surrounding regions. At its height, Oyo was one of the most advanced military powers in Africa, with well-organized armies, fortified cities, and an extensive network of allies. The empire was a symbol of Yoruba unity and strength, and its influence stretched far beyond the borders of present-day Nigeria. Culturally, the Oyo Empire was a center of learning and art. The Yoruba people excelled in sculpting, weaving, and other crafts. Their religious practices, deeply rooted in ancestral worship, were conducted with great reverence and ritual. The city of Oyo-Ile, with its magnificent palaces and grand temples, was a reflection of the empire's power and sophistication. But as the empire's wealth and power grew, so too did the divisions within it. The rise of rival factions, both within the royal court and among the military elites, would set the stage for the internal struggles that would ultimately bring the mighty Oyo Empire to its knees. Despite its outward appearance of strength, the Oyo Empire was beginning to show signs of internal weakness. The once unified kingdom began to fracture under the weight of its own success. Power struggles among the ruling elite were on the rise, particularly between the Alaafin and the Oyo Mesi. The council, initially formed to advise and check the power of the monarch, began to assert its own authority, often clashing with the Alaafin's rule. The political system, which had once maintained balance, was now a battleground for competing ambitions. Additionally, the Oyo military, once a symbol of discipline and unity, began to suffer from overextension. The empire's increasing territorial demands stretched the military thin, and the once feared cavalry began to show signs of fatigue. Military campaigns that had once been swift and decisive were now bogged down by logistical difficulties and the growing inability to maintain control over such vast territories. The very strength that had propelled Oyo to power was becoming a liability as internal and external pressures took their toll. The empire's wealth also contributed to its vulnerability. As Oyo became richer, corruption began to seep into its administrative structures. The ruling elite, once devoted to the good of the empire, began to prioritize personal gain, with bribery and exploitation becoming common. The people who had once thrived under the Oyo system began to suffer under heavy taxation and social inequality. The unity that had once bound the people of Oyo together was now fractured by resentment and division. As the cracks in Oyo's foundation deepened, there was an increasing sense of unease. The once unassailable empire was now a house divided, and the winds of change began to blow. What had once seemed like an unstoppable force was beginning to show signs of vulnerability, and the world watched as the Oyo Empire began to falter under the weight of its internal strife. By the early 18th century, the tensions within the Oyo Empire had reached a breaking point. Factionalism and infighting among the ruling elites erupted into open conflict. The Oyo Mesi, once the guardians of the empire's political system, became key players in a struggle for power that threatened to tear the empire apart. Rival factions vied for control of the throne, and the military, which had once been a cohesive force, was now split along political lines. The civil war that followed was devastating. Oyo's once formidable military was now fractured, with different factions waging war against one another. The cavalry, once the pride of the empire, was now split into competing armies, and their once thunderous charge became a symbol of internal disarray. Battles were fought not to expand the empire but to control its very heart. The Alaafin, once the supreme ruler of a united empire, was now just one figure in a political chess game. His ability to command loyalty was weakened as both the Oyo Mesi and military leaders sought to assert their power. The capital, Oyo Ile, which had once stood as a symbol of imperial might, became a battleground as factions fought for control. The war was not only political but also deeply social. The common people, once proud to be part of the Oyo Empire, found themselves caught in the crossfire. The once thriving economy faltered as trade routes were disrupted, and resources were diverted to fund the civil war. The once great cities of Oyo began to crumble, and the empire's power and influence dwindled as the infighting consumed it from within. The collapse of the Oyo Empire came swiftly after years of civil war and political fragmentation. The once mighty cavalry, which had struck fear across West Africa, was now a shadow of its former self. The unity and discipline that had once made the Oyo military a formidable force dissolved as rival factions took control of different regions. The empire's borders shrank rapidly as rebellious vassal states and enemy kingdoms seized the opportunity to break free from Oyo's crumbling hold. The final blow came when the Oyo Mesi, seeing their chance for power, orchestrated the deposition of the Alaafin, a move that signaled the disintegration of the central authority. With no strong leader to unite the empire, the fragmented factions descended into chaos, each vying for supremacy in a decimated landscape. Oyo Ile, once the heart of the empire, was ransacked by rebels, and the power of the Alaafin was reduced to a mere shadow of its former glory. The Oyo cavalry, once the symbol of military excellence, was now weakened by years of internal conflict and lack of resources. The elite warriors who had once roamed the plains of West Africa, with unparalleled power and speed, were no longer able to maintain control over the empire's vast territory. Without the cavalry's strength, Oyo's cities fell to invaders, and the once great empire was reduced to a fractured collection of smaller kingdoms and territories. Trade, which had once fueled the empire's prosperity, collapsed as the roads became unsafe and the infrastructure deteriorated. The rich cities of Oyo Ile and its neighboring towns became mere shadows of their former selves, filled with poverty, fear, and chaos. The collapse of the Oyo Empire marked the end of an era in West African history, an era of political stability, economic prosperity, and military dominance. As the Oyo Empire faded into history, Its once glorious legacy was tarnished by internal strife and the inability to adapt to the changing political and social landscape. Yet even in its fall, the story of Oyo's rise and demise became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how internal discord can unravel even the most powerful of empires. Though the Oyo Empire fell, its legacy has lived on in the culture, politics, and history of West Africa. The Yoruba people, whose ancestors once thrived under the Oyo system, continue to play a prominent role in shaping the region's identity. Despite the collapse of the empire, the Yoruba culture, language, and traditions have endured, deeply influencing modern Nigerian society. The fall of Oyo is often viewed as a tragic reminder of how even the mightiest empires are vulnerable to the forces of internal division. The political system of the Oyo Messi, which once ensured stability, became a source of chaos and rivalry in the empire's final years. The Alaafin's power, once absolute, could not withstand the strain of these internal conflicts. Oyo's collapse stands as a testament to the dangers of over-reliance on military might, the fragility of political systems, and the destructive nature of unchecked ambition. Yet, the story of Oyo is not only one of decline, it is also a story of resilience. After the fall of the empire, the Yoruba people rebuilt their communities and continued to thrive. The Yoruba culture, with its rich traditions of art, religion, and governance, was not completely destroyed by the empire's collapse. The spirit of Oyo lived on in the smaller kingdoms that emerged from its ashes, and in the stories and myths passed down through generations. The thunder of the Alaafin may have quieted, but the impact of the Oyo Empire resonates throughout West Africa today. Its rise and fall remain a powerful symbol of both the heights of human achievement and the tragic consequences of division. The Oyo Empire, though no longer a political force, remains an indelible part of African history, its story etched into the fabric of West African culture and memory for generations to come.